Hey guys, so in today's video I'm going to be talking about The Cabin in the Woods, which I have to say is one of my all-time favourite horror films, and I'm going to tell you the reasons why. I'm going to be splitting this review into two sections. The first section is going to be spoiler free, and then the second part of this review will have spoilers, and I will tell you when that's coming up in case you haven't seen this film and you don't want to know what happens. So this is a 2012 American horror slash comedy. I absolutely love this film. I remember when this film first was being released and there was so much hype about it. Everyone was raving about how good it was. I couldn't wait to see it. I remember I wanted to see it at cinema, but then I didn't get there in time. So I kind of missed out, and then one of my best friends bought it on DVD. I borrowed it, watched it from her, and then went straight out and bought my own copy. I loved it so much. Yeah, it really is a very well-made horror film. Basically, it starts off with these 5 teenagers, and they're going on holiday to this creepy cabin in the woods. And I don't really want to say too much about it because I feel like this is one of those horror films where you have to go into it knowing as little as possible before you see it, because there are a few little twists in here. And I remember hearing about like people will go and see it and then they'll be posting online about what happens, and I didn't want to know at the time. I was like, I'm not going to read any reviews, I'm not going to know anything about it, I'm not going to really even watch trailers, until I watch this film. And I'm really glad I didn't, because it was just, the reveal of what happens in this is really good. Like I said, it's very well done. It's got great horror in it, it's got great characters in it. It's very funny. One of my favourite characters is one of the students called Marty. I think he's really funny. He's a really great character, really fun. It kind of has all the horror cliches and kind of turns them on their heads, and it's really good. So yeah, if you don't want to know too much about it, that's pretty much all I want to say. It's about these teenagers who go into a cabin in the woods, and then shit happens. I feel like this is kind of split into 3 parts, this film. The first part is very much horror cliche. You have all these typical college students who want to have a good time and mess around, and they go to this cabin, and that shit's gonna happen. And the middle part is like, okay, again, this is like you're starting to see the monsters, and it's like a typical kind of horror film. You're like, okay. And then the third part of the film, where it kind of gets more into it and you find out more details, it's just, you end up thinking just like, what the hell is happening? And then the ending is just absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I would highly recommend this film. I didn't find it particularly scary. There are scary elements. Well, yeah, there are quite gruesome. I was gonna say that it's not that gruesome, but there are actually some pretty gruesome parts in this film. But as I said, it is slightly a comedy, so it's not like terrifyingly scary. I would highly recommend it if you're not really a fan of horror films, but you want to watch something that's a little bit different. I would recommend this. It's a really great film. So yeah, that's kind of like the end of my spoilery bit. I would say definitely 5 out of 5. I love watching this. I love rewatching this. It's a great story. But yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say if you don't want to know too much about what's going to happen. So now I'm going to talk fully through the storyline and how things kind of happen and more about this movie. So if you don't want to know, then this is where you should stop watching. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. And for those of you who want to know what happens more in depth in this film, I'm going to get into that now. So as I said, you have these teenagers. 5 teenagers go to this cabin in the woods, and it's typical kind of, they're drinking, they're having a laugh, there's a little bit of romance and stuff going on. And you have these 5 teenagers who you kind of see in all horror films. So you have the kind of girl who's like a little bit of the slut and is kind of like, trying to put herself out there and get with all the guys. Then you have the guy who's on the football team, he's like the big athlete, the big jock. You have like the geeky kind of stoner kid who's like just there to smoke and have fun. and you have like the little innocent girl, and so you have all these different guys, all these different characters that are all friends and are kind of going on holiday together. And that's how it kind of starts off. And then at one point they're kind of walking around the cabin, they're kind of investigating it. They end up in this cabin because I think it's one of the friends, it's like their cousin's cabin or something, or they get invited to this cabin randomly and they just go. And anyway, yeah, they go down into the basement and it's full of all these different kind of like artifacts and items and just like creepy things. Like there's dolls, there's ornaments, there's jewelry boxes, there's letters, books, pictures, costumes. Those are these different artifacts, and each of the characters, each of the college students in the story kind of walk about the basement and kind of picking up and looking at items. Then there's this item, a couple items they take a particular interest in. Particularly one, the girl who's the innocent girl in this, the Virgin, she reads a passage from this book. And then you kind of get the sense that something is going on, and it kind of switches to, you find out that these teenagers have been kind of sent to this cabin on purpose by these people who are trying to complete a ritual. Now, it seems to be like this by these scientists. These scientists have this creepy underground base, and you find out that they are actually manipulating every scenario that is happening within this cabin. For example, they pump chemicals into the cabin to make these characters do certain things, like they pump pheromones or like hormones into the cabin to make them, you know, to like make the kids like want to have sex and stuff like that, or make them do stupid things like split up, which you normally wouldn't do. So this is where like all the cliches come in. It's like, you know, in horror, when stuff starts happening around the cabin, they're like, oh, let's split up, which in real life, you know, that's like a really bad idea and no one would ever do, and realistically you wouldn't do, because they're pumping all these chemicals that kind of distorts how they're thinking and feeling. They put like audio into the cabin so people are hearing things, like, you know, to try and manipulate situations. And they're doing this because they have to, like I said, complete a ritual to basically, there's these like characters called the Ancient Ones, and they have to please the Ancient Ones so they won't destroy Earth. And this is happening all around the world. I believe that's happening in different countries. You kind of see clips from, like, there's these school kids in China who are going through this and all this kind of thing. But this is the Americans' scenario. They send these people to a cabin in the woods, and in the basement, whatever object they pick up and find interesting is the monster that they end up facing, that they're going to get killed by. For example, I'm pretty sure at some point when they're in the basement, one of the characters picks up a box, which is the box from Hellraiser, and there were like masks of like pumpkins and stuff, and there were like creepy dolls. So if they paid interest in this box, Hellraiser would like come after them, kind of thing. Or if they paid interest in these dolls, and the creepy dolls would come and kill them. As it happens, they end up kind of bringing up these crazy farmer zombie things that come up. So they get attacked by zombies and they're slowly getting killed off, and they're all in the woods, and they're kind of, like I said, split up, and they're all running around. And you kind of see the death sequences in all of these. I think the death, they also have to die in a certain way. The ritual has to be completed by 5 people. It has to be completed by, let me just check. Yeah, the whore, the athlete, the scholar, the fool, and the virgin. These 5 people have to be killed in a certain order in order to complete the ritual, if that makes sense. It's quite complicated. It's much easier when you watch it, but explaining it gets a little bit muddled. But yeah, so they're all getting killed off in this ritual thing. And then my favourite character, Marty, who is the fool, who is also a stoner, he kind of he figures out almost what's happening, and he's not being as manipulated as much as the others. And you find out it's because he's smoking weed. The weed is kind of blocking blocking the scientists' manipulation techniques, like the chemicals. The chemicals that they pump into the cabin aren't working on him because the weed is kind of counteracting it. Which is a little bit silly, but it just makes for a great story, and it's really fun. Like at the minute when they say, like, oh, let's split up, he stood there like, why? That's a really bad idea kind of thing. And anyway, he kind of pops up, and at this point, I believe it's only him alive and another girl, the Virgin, who are alive. And he finds her, and they somehow they get into this underground elevator, and they end up within this scientist facility. So they're kind of finding out what's going on, and at this point you cut to a really awesome scene where they get into these cubes, and these cubes are what are holding all the different monsters, all the different possibilities that could have killed them. And it's really cool because they're just pretty much every single monster from every single horror film you can ever think of is in this film. It's in those boxes, which at one point get released, and just all hell breaks loose in this scientist facility. Everyone's getting killed. There are just monsters all over the place, and you know, these two characters, the Fool and the Virgin, are just kind of wandering around together, trying to find out what's happening, trying to escape. And it's just really great. And I'm not going to say what happens in the very end of this film, just in case, you know, you're still watching up until this point and you still want to see this film when you haven't seen it. I don't want to spoil it that far. But the ending is absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love the ending of this film. It's just perfect. It's amazing. So yeah, if you just want a good laugh and a good horror film, then I would highly recommend this. I feel like nowadays it's very hard to find a horror film which is new. You know, all horror films nowadays, they're kind of, it's been done. You know, ghost stories, demons, horror stories, Ouija boards, you know, monsters, werewolves, vampires. So much has been done, and it's just, I just thought this was a really nice, refreshing horror film, if you will. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I hope it made sense. And yeah, if you have any questions, then please leave them down below. But I would just, yeah, highly recommend this. Great film. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll be reviewing some more horror films which will be up very soon. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like if you enjoyed, and if you'd like to see more, then please subscribe. So until next time guys, bye, thanks for watching.